Hopefully that worked. Perfect timing. All right, so I'm gonna start off just through an opportunity, just so you can see the whole thing, but this is gonna be real quick. So before you do anything, you have to put people in as a contact, right? You can't set up an opportunity unless you have the contact in there. So you go into contact, put the people's name in, then you either go to this little handshake here, or within the contact, there's a little green bar that says create opportunity. Then that'll bring you into your contact or into your opportunity for that contact. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go here and click residential condo townhouse. That'll bring up all this. This is just your compliance, so you know what you need to send out to your people. Then you're going to go to transaction. That's going to take you out of command and into DocuSign. I'm sure it'll make me log in. And this brings you into your room. Um, to add any documents to this, you're going to go to the add button, DocuSign forms. These are already pre-done packets. So you're going to go to the packets, rental tenant, and then you can just select whatever you need. I'm going to start with the lease so you can just go through that. If you have questions, just stop me at any time. Oh, it's already here. So first part of it, you're going to put the landlord's name, landlord's address, tenant's name, tenant's address. Is this like too big or too small? It's weird. Um, and you're going to put their address. The second part, you're going to put the like what the apartment is or condo is, that address. And this is the important page. So the term of the lease is for usually it's 1 year, or could be 2 years, 3 years, but around here we don't really do any too many short-term or seasonal leases. So you're going to do the term is for 1 year. I'm having a hard time seeing this crazy glare. Um, starting on let's say March 1st, ending on uh whatever February 28th of the next year or something like that. You're going to put the rent amount. So the rent for this term is $2,500. Will be paid as follows: $2,500 a month, which is due on usually put like the fifth, just to give a little leeway for people to get paid and all that kind of stuff. Due on the fifth of each month. Rent should be payable to, and then whatever, however the landlord wants it. Could be to him or her personally, or to their LLC or whatever. Second part is the initial deposit for like a regular, like not in a big building or through a big management company. We don't really do initial deposits like all that often. That's usually just to like hold it. But you'll have the next part, which is the first month's rent or the security deposit. The security deposits, just so you guys know, can't be more than 1.5 months rent. Um, and that's just the law in the state. Um, so if you have somebody who wants to prepay rent, like, oh, let's say they have because this will come up. They have bad credit and they were like, oh, we'll prepay 6 months in advance. You can't do that. The the advance rent is considered security, so it can't be more than 1.5 months. A lot of people, I see a lot of leases come through that have prepaid rent, and it's
Yeah, people always question that.
yeah, it's not allowed.
This is not that.
Yeah,
well.
which is fine, but that can't be done through let's just say they can do like if they wanted to work that out themselves, but it can't be through a real estate company. That it's illegal for us to write that up like that. Also pet security. So if you have like a pet and they want security, that pet security and um security deposit can't be equal to more than 1.5 months together. So just keep that in mind.
So for the initial deposit, do you just leave it blank? Or?
Yeah, initial deposit you could leave it blank or you could strike it out. Yeah, that's fine. So then the security deposit goes there. Late payment penalty. Usually if it's not received by like the 6th, some people do 14th. It's up to the landlord. Could be $50. Could be whatever. $50, $35 is usually I hate to use the word standard, but pretty standard. And then if there's like a bounce check, that's usually the same thing, $35, $50, depending on what their bank's going to charge them if the check bounces. Then this section for utilities, depending on the unit, like a garden apartment might have heat that's included. They might have a boiler and it's just included in the rent. Could be separate. Usually with like a single family home, it's just like you purchased it, you pay for basically everything. And then there's just little clauses in here. No assignment or subletting. Damages, quiet enjoyment. The quiet enjoyment is you can't have like the landlord like I want to say harassing you, but you're renting the place. You should be left alone. That's your right. The section for tenant repairs and maintenance. So some leases, the landlord will pay for repairs. Some leases, the tenant would be required to pay for the first $100 or $200 in repairs, which could be a good thing for the landlord, so they're not running over to change light bulbs and clog sinks and stuff like that. It's like, well, if you clog the sink and it's going to cost me, the landlord, $300, you're going to pay the first $100. That's just a way that you can like protect your landlord a little bit. And then they have stuff in there like cutting the grass, maintaining the property, whatever. Then there's there's little sections for access to the property. The landlord's got to have access for like repairs, inspection, but they also have to give the tenant notice and to allow them to come in. There's so much in here. It'd take an hour to like go through this and read it all. Some tenants are responsible for obtaining renter's insurance. So the landlord's homeowner's insurance will cover certain things, but it won't cover the contents of the inside of the apartment. So God forbid there's a flood or a fire or something like that, and you don't have renter's insurance, you're out of luck. So this is a important part for lease renewal. So the tenant must be offered a renewal of the lease by the landlord, unless the landlord has good cause not to do it, not to re-rent to them. So this part you're going to want to put not less than 60 days before the end of the lease term so that your people at least know 2 months in advance that they need to find another place. I really cannot see with this. Questions so far while I pull this up so I can actually see.
I have a question. Are there any restrictions or can there be any restrictions or on visitors? I don't know, how many parties or family visiting for extended periods of time? Like, is there anything like that included in the lease at all?
So there's no restrictions on really, well, at least in like a New Jersey lease. For visitors and stuff like that, but if you have people staying for extended period of time, like that could become an issue.
Which extended period of time would be?
I don't think there's one in here for that. Pretty sure there's not. Yeah, there's not.
There's probably something around also restriction on how many people can be renting, living in the.
So yeah, so restriction on number of people in a property is town by town through the zoning office, through what their occupancy limits are. So you always want to check that too, like if you get, especially, if you're representing a landlord and there are six people in a 2-bedroom apartment, that's not the town occupancy laws are not gonna allow that. So like, I'll use Clifton for an example, just because when you change renters and stuff, like for their CO, you have to list like who's gonna be living there. So you'll never get your CO if they look at it and there's 6 people in a 2-bedroom.
Okay, and if someone wants to rent, for example, and then rent out like a bedroom, and it's within the limits, but if they want to rent it out to someone, is that?
No, that's not allowed under this lease. So that goes under the no assignment or subletting.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I mean, situations change where, let's say you had the room, situations change where maybe like parents need to move in or somebody in the family needs to move in. That's a conversation that you could have with the landlord, that maybe they can make an exception for that, but that's nothing that we would really deal with. That's tenant and landlord discussion.
I'm sorry, one more. So
Yeah.
no assignment and subletting, does it also include Airbnb?
So we don't really do, like, we don't, Airbnb is not something that we do.
Right, but if I rent that and then I wanted to Airbnb while I'm away.
Oh, no, yeah, you could not do
You
that.
can, so that would be just.
That would fall on, I understand, yeah, that would fall under the same thing. That would be crazy, actually.
It's what people do. I mean, I know, maybe not sure how legal that is, but.
Should have connected it for here, and I could look at this one. No. You guys can see fine?
So.
Let's see what lights. I'm not gonna go through everything just because every lease is like a little different. Oh, here we go. No dogs, cats, or other pets shall be permitted on the property without the prior written consent of the landlord. It happens all the time. So now there is emotional support animals, which under the law of discrimination, you cannot discriminate against someone that has one. There obviously has to be the correct documentation. But even if you say no pets and somebody comes and says, I have an ESA, if they're renting it through a real estate company, you have no choice. You have to entertain those people. So I have a client who at the time was renting in Wayne in a garden apartment that was no pets, and he had like 100-and-something-pound German Shepherd, legit emotional support animal in a no pet building. So, he was a veteran, whatever, he needed it. Got to do it. And a lot of landlords are like, no, no pets. It's like no pets except for that, or an actual, like a guide dog or something like that.
Kieran, who has to provide the documentation of
Tenant.
the classification?
Tenant's
And
got
provides it to you, or the
Mhm.
landlord has?
they'll, or give it to you, you give it to the landlord.
What happens if they get the pet after?
Then you have to get approval. Because you didn't have one when you first signed.
And they can have the means to kick them out, correct? Like,
It's
doesn't that
next to
only-
impossible, but
Okay.
yeah. New Jersey,
They can't evict them, right?
Yeah.
Have the letter.
yeah, it's so hard to evict someone in New Jersey, and New Jersey is not a landlord-friendly state. It's a tenant-friendly state. So it'd be pretty tough. All right, so this part is broker's commission. So, it used to be where before all these changes that happened, at the end of the summer, it used to be 95, maybe 90, more 98% of the time, the tenant would pay the full commission. Now you have a tenant agency agreement, just like a buyer's agency agreement, which defines who's paying what, and then you have your listing agreement of who pays what. You used to not be able to get paid from a tenant and a buyer, or a buyer and a seller. It used to be illegal. Now you can get paid from both. So again, it's like you have to have more discussions with your landlords and with the buyers on like the potential of how you're going to get paid and what it's going to cost them and all that. So if you're renting a property for a landlord, your commission statement could be a full month, it could be a half month. It's really up to you of what you negotiate with them. And then the tenant agency agreement, it's going to be the same thing. You could ask them for a whole month. They might go and find somebody else that's going to do it for less. You just kind of have to show your value to them.
So where's that coming from though? Is it coming out of the security? It can't come out of the security deposit, so they just have to pay more, so they pay the security deposit and the half of.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it used to be 1.5 months rent. Think about this, right? So let's say $2,000 rent. So you have $2,000 first month rent. You have a $3,500 security deposit. Then you have a $2,000 broker fee. So $6,500 to get into an apartment. That's like insane. Go buy a house. Talk to Mary. Go buy a house.
Do you want to get pre-approved?
I was just gonna say, let's just go, come to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's like also a conversation that you could end up having with them. Like, hey, like you have almost 10 grand. Maybe you can, talk to Mary and do something.
Does the tenant agency agreement need to be signed in advance of?
In advance.
Same thing?
Yeah,
In
so you
advance of
meet,
them showing any property?
same as buyer's agency
Same thing.
agreement. So you meet your tenant, they sign the statement of disclosures, they sign the tenant agency agreement. So they know how everything's working, they know how everyone's getting paid, there's no surprises. Something that's come up recently is, and which is kind of good that we have the agreement now. A tenant in the past was not a party to the listing agreement. So why should they have to pay the money that these other people agreed upon? So now you can make your agreement before you go out and start seeing stuff. So I think it's better. Yeah,
How many people are having successful tenancy agency agreements? Anybody? Just curious, yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah.
I mean, listen,
Just
in
curious,
most of the
what's the
country,
response from the renting community?
yeah. In most of the country, the landlord pays. It's just our crazy northeast. Pretty much.
So, so that's.
Well, doesn't it make sense? Like you're hiring a real estate agent to find you,
Yeah, and.
to find you a
Yeah,
qualified
that's
tenant? Why the hell should the tenant?
And
in my
doesn't pay
opinion?
anything, right?
It makes no
Everything
sense.
is all the tenant who pays everything.
So now there's a little bit negotiating.
It just changed with this last settlement.
August 1st, yeah, same thing as that settlement.
And before it was just the tenant paying.
Basically, it was very rare. I mean, the landlord could pay, but they didn't. 'Cause
Okay,
why would
and
they?
now we can split it, that's the change.
Now you can get paid from both.
So
So
they do
you-
like half and half.
You can do half and half.
So even as the agent for the landlord?
Hmm?
Even as the agent for the landlord,
You can get paid from the tenant and the landlord.
do you still have to have the tenant agency agreement? You have to
Yes.
have that.
You have to have that
on both
regardless.
sides for any
Both
tenant,
sides.
no matter who you represent.
Yep. Just keeps everything clear, out in the open. Expectations are set. And that's it. This is just listing broker, participating broker information.
We don't see it on the big screen when.
Oh.
it's
I do it double time. Sorry. Yeah, so it's just basic info. And then there's even another spot here, tenant shall be payable as follows, and then you can put in where the checks, what the amounts of the checks and where they're going. Lead-based paint, anything for 78, sale or rental, use lead-based paint disclosure, you get that from the landlord's agent. Window guard notification, there's a separate form for that too. That's, I mean. If they want it, they gotta put it. You don't want a kid falling out. Yeah,
So. If you're representing the landlord,
yes.
who's in charge of doing the lease? The landlord's realtor or the tenant's realtor?
Good question. Landlords, should be landlords. A lot of times buyer's agents will just like give you a lease and it's like,
I've had
No.
other agents that were representing the landlord say, can you just drop? the
Yeah,
lease?"
they're lazy.
Being lazy.
lazy.
So I would do it, but I think there should.
It should be the landlord's lease. It's a landlord's property. It's gonna be the landlord's tenant,
Should be his
should be
Yeah.
his.
contract.
We
Yeah.
have agents that will say, hey, can you just draft it?
Yeah. No,
Specifically respond to something like that.
I usually just say, okay, and do it, but
Right, but
I
like,
think it should be their
that's the
responsibility.
landlord.
should definitely be the
But what
landlord.
do you say to them? Oh, well, it's not my responsibility.
And then
Like,
they
you don't have to
scratch
say that.
off.
I would
I
just,
draft
I would
it,
say,
it's
I
my
don't,
stuff.
I don't know
then
the
they-
terms that your landlord wants,
And
like.
ask you to update
Uh-huh. Usually, like, well, the one that happen is the landlord, they have their own.
A lot of times
All the time
landlords
they have their own
their
list.
own, they take this, they give it to their attorney, and the attorney makes up something that's
Yeah.
they deem to be better. Cool.
No
You have a
season for
landlord
everybody.
that's
Yeah.
the business and they ask you to draft it up, then you could do that, or do you incorporate their attorney's review on that?
Say it again?
So say you have someone who's new in the business, gonna rent something new, bought something, whatever, and does not have a lease, the landlord wants that. I could draft something, would you incorporate their attorney with this? Would you not have their? Would you not recommend their attorney to review it?
No, they could. Attorneys could. Yeah. Oh, yeah, cost them. But
But it's not,
They all don't
It's-
have attorneys
they
though.
don't
Yeah.
always do that,
Mostly
they
they
just
don't.
let it.
No.
they-
So I haven't had one yet that.
Really, so usually no.
Mhm.
Interesting.
This may happen just because it's in our area. If you have a landlord that has a well, they have to provide, a well water test once every 5 years. And that's costly. It needs to be done in advance, so just keep that in the back of your mind. What else is important?
Radon, probably.
I mean, you don't need to do that, but they could if they wanted to.
So the well testing is mandatory if
Yeah, you have to
Landlord
provide
is-
people with potable water. That's a state thing too. All right, so we'll get out of this. Show you a couple other things, and then Mary can talk to you guys about how to get people to not do this. Show you. All right. So this, we're not gonna go through this because this is a large document, but you should 1000% read it when you have a second. Just so that you're educated when you give these to your people and they start asking you all these questions and you're like, oh. So this is truth in renting. It's all the rights for tenants in a pamphlet. They have to sign it, but it has like everything, like what happens for renewal, cable installation, pets, lease termination, right of entry, like when the landlord's allowed to come in and how that goes. Security deposits, discrimination, everything. It's good. What eviction. So it's definitely something that you want to,
From the state.
yeah, it's from the state. A lot of information that you should know that we're not going to do right now.
This I only have, is it have other languages?
No, oh, there's only truth in renting in Spanish. We've been asked so many times why there's not a contract and a lease in Spanish. Just, I mean, because of where we live. And they just don't do it. I don't know
So
why.
weird.
I don't know why. It would be so much easier.
I have a question. So before sending it out to whoever it belongs to.
Yeah.
We have to double check where it says signature and initial to make
Uh,
sure it's on the right spot.
No. So if you put everybody. So
When you create the transaction, or doesn't it fill it?
this details page. And this goes for sale or rental. This column on the right here. If you were to put them in the correct spot. It should tag it. I thought it would say tenant, but maybe not. Mrs. Smith. Well, we're about to find out. So for a purchase contract, if you put the name and email in there, it'll tag it exactly where it needs to go for every document.
That's in lieu of the transaction sheet, that's similar?
No, that's just, that just adds the tags where they're supposed to be. So if I went here. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if it's gonna work. You guys did just see my name there, right?
It doesn't keep, you have to type it in and
Oh,
then
you
if it comes,
bastard.
yeah,
It does not take email
I-
sometimes.
Wrong keyword.
I know.
All right, whatever. Let's see if it works. Yeah, so it's all tagged.
Only because you put it in though,
Yeah, so it's not from that
it's
page.
not gonna come,
It only does buyers from that page, but you can do it on, the right before you send it out. You can put the name and it'll tag it everywhere.
somewhere in there you could put parties to the contract, you could call people in. And then they'll come up, I don't always know where that is.
So you add them right here. Under the recipients, and it'll tag it. All right, last thing, I just want to do the, I literally can't see. I'm like, feel like I'm like looking in the sun.
What if you shut the lights off as closest to the TV?
Yeah, it's probably what I should have done. That's all right.
Yeah.
A little better. All right. So then there's this, and we'll be done.
So do you need to send truth in lending? Like when you need a new client, whatever.
Should.
I might send the mold guidelines, I'll send the lead paint brochure
You
sometimes
should,
with new
yeah.
buyers.
Yeah.
You send the truth in lending. So you at least have sent it while they have a little time to read it.
All right, so this is just the agency agreement. So you're gonna put with the potential tenant's name, brokerage firm, your name, where you work. This just says tenant does not have a business relationship with anybody else. There's no tenant agency agreement currently in effect somewhere else. And that they've disclosed that they've seen any other properties of anybody else. This is the type of agency that you choose, tenant agent, disclosed dual agent, or designated agent would be if it was within our office or your own listing. The term, when it starts,
Well, those two, like if you want to put the last two, it doesn't let you. Typo.
correct. So just so if it is your listing, choose disclosed dual agent, you personally, your listing, and it's your tenant. If it is within our office, you can put designated.
Maybe you mark it up later when you go to, after you set signatures, you can go back and mark it and add a check mark. on that second box? I'm trying.
You should only really choose one. That's what the board said. I don't know why. And I wouldn't go back and add. Retainer fee. You want to do it? Knock yourself out. Nobody, I haven't seen it yet. That's like an attorney. When you hire an attorney and they're like, send me $500 before I even open your file. Commission due with that. This is your protection that this agreement will continue for however many days after it ends. So that's up to you, what you put in there. That's, I mean, it's just like the buyer's agency one, just with tenant, simple. That's really it. Any questions about anything specific before Mary takes it away?
So those that you have right now, I think there's like 4 forms or 3 forms, those are the required forms for every,
So like for when you meet or for total?
okay.
So for when you meet, statement of disclosures, that just talks about agency. Your,
Which is not included,
no, you want to see it?
but we would normally include it here.
Yeah, I just wanted to delete it because there was too many
Right,
things up
Because
there.
this is what we would submit to the tenant once we try to finalize the transaction of a specific lease.
Yeah, so when you meet them, you would need the statement of disclosures, and the tenant agency agreement.
Right, but those printed. Like a physical copy.
Printed or emailed, it's fine.
Oh,
Either way
okay.
is fine.
CIS, or that's in the.
That's the statement of disclosure. And then truth in renting, not a bad idea to give it to them just right off the bat. And then send that out. And then
Oh, I see, because you can send the some documents at different times, it doesn't go everything together.
correct. You know, unless sometimes you meet them and everything happens, you know, at once. But you know, generally you're gonna have a meeting with them, give them this stuff or send them this stuff. And then go out and start looking for rentals. That's about it. Go on forever.
Interrupt you.
No, I was gonna show them MTN, but I'll,
You know, you guys know I interrupted him, right?
sorry.
But did everyone have their questions answered by him?
I could stay too if you have other questions.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, so can everyone see this if I leave this here? Because I need to use it, but it's a little heavy. Okay, so thanks for coming. I'm Mary Ratchford. I know all of you guys. A few things. We're gonna do just kind of mortgage basics today. Just to give you a little information, so you're a little dangerous out there. But also before we start on that, does anybody have any kind of particular mortgage scenario or question they want to ask right now before I get started? Anything they've run into? We'll talk later. Adrian, yeah, please.
You get a drink for that.
With the CSDR loan? Or no,
DSCR loan.
DSCR loan?
Yep,
So maybe we can talk about it later. right?
absolutely. Excellent question. That's one of our categories. DSCR loan he asked about. That means debt service coverage ratio. Okay, so I'm gonna just put the categories down for mortgages into 4 main categories. Okay, and just kind of touch on them a little bit each. And then as you get more knowledge, then you have more questions that you're gonna ask. And I am always available too. If you guys have questions, it doesn't matter if the buyer is using me as a lender, it doesn't matter at all. All right, call me, I'll look at your contract. I'll see what things are that you should be looking for based on my experience, okay?
We just did it the other day.
Yeah.
Right.
We're like, we need to call Mary. We need to phone a friend.
I
So,
spared you, Mary.
listen,
You
I'm
shut it down.
happy to do it. Because it's a lot of information. And there's no way you guys should know all this information. I mean, like, sometimes my head is like, whoa, what's that new product? So you gotta utilize it. Now, the first thing I have to say that some of you do really well when you get, oh God, I look so heavy in that. It's really close.
Think back.
Back off a little bit. Thank you.
The soft right over.
So the first thing that some of you do really well is before you even take people out is to get a pre-qualification. All right, and the reason why that's so important is because you could be spending a lot of time with people and they may not qualify. You could be spending a lot of time with people and they're not in the right price point. And then how do you go backwards? All right, because you're showing them $500,000 homes and they're only qualified for 300. They tell you, oh yeah, I'm pre-qualified. I have this old pre-approval, 6 months, 8 months old. I can't tell you how often I see that kind of thing. And it's just to refresh. Now, one thing, keep this in mind. People are gonna be like, I don't know if I want to get a pre-approval. It's gonna hurt my credit. What's the answer to that?
Softball.
Excellent.
What is that? I'm sorry.
It's called a soft credit pull.
Taking her.
Yeah, it means that it's not a hard inquiry on your credit report. No one knows it, so you're not gonna get all these solicitation calls. It also gives me the total picture, and it's good for 120 days. I don't do a hard pull on the credit until I get a contract and I put it into process. Listen to this story. I'm gonna bring this story in. I had a customer who's supposed to close on Monday for a purchase, supposed to be a dual. He was selling and purchasing. His buyer, on Saturday, they called and said, they're not qualified. We gotta restructure it. So I got involved, I called the lender, and I'm like, what happened? Because they were in contract 6 weeks. You should be able to close a loan in 30 days, no matter what, in my opinion. Very seldomly should it take over 30, unless there's so many moving parts, but that's the standard, at least for guaranteed rate. The other lender never ran a hard credit pull until 2 days before closing. Score went from 700 to 610.
Damn.
Yeah. He qualified for a conventional loan then,
No.
and then he could have flipped to an FHA, but they decided to bring another co-mortgager in. Rates expiring in 5 days. There's gonna be extension costs. We don't even know if it's strong. So it's really, really important that you have a good relationship with whoever you're working with on a lending side and your buyers. Call them, and a lot of them are gonna be like, yeah, it's qualified. This guy said the same thing. But that's one of the things that you can ask now that you know. Okay, so you did a soft credit pull. When do you do the hard credit pull? Another thing that is critically important is when you look at a pre-approval and it says that they ran an AUS. What does an AUS stand for? AUS. You might know.
Automated underwriting system.
Excellent. I'm getting a slice of pizza and a tuna sandwich. People pre-approve in different methods, okay? Sometimes they collect docs, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they run it through an automated underwriting system, sometimes they don't, okay? If you're gonna get a pre-approval, you have to make sure that you see on there, documents were collected and reviewed. Okay, that's income and assets, and you also have to make sure you see it was ran through an AUS, automated underwriting system. If it wasn't, it's a shit pre-approval.
If it doesn't say that, you
Nope.
can call.
You can call, but the guy's not gonna,
But
like
somebody's
this
gonna
guy
tell
said,
you
yeah, it's
no.
gonna close, it's gonna close. I shouldn't be talk disparaging about my own industry, but you just have to make sure you're dealing and call every time the lender. And then if it's not on there, ask them, why isn't it on there? Can you send me a copy of the desktop approval? You know, what are your ratios, income and loan to value? I've had people call me and ask me, it's fine. Okay, any questions on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are two things that you said we wanna see that the document, somebody was check the documents here.
Documents, and what that means is if someone calls me and I pre-qualify them. And this has happened to a lot of people in this room, I won't send a pre-approval until I have their documents. Because they might say they're making 150,000, but they might not be, and they might say they have this much money in the bank, but they might not have it. So for me to issue a pre-approval, I've got to read it and see it and like feel it and know it's good.
Okay.
Because then your loan is gonna go through, your purchase is gonna go through easily, it's gonna go through, it's like no stress. So you always wanna get this done upfront.
So the pre-approval sheet, I'm guessing there's some kind of a document that's being.
It will
sent to-
say you are pre-approved contingent upon. You know, already we've reviewed your disclosure, your income, your assets, we ran an AUS, we ran a credit profile, it should say that.
Oh.
Okay, there is something that's called a power bid approval, that means we do this on conventional loans, and it means the loan already went through underwriting. An underwriter cleared it, approved it, gave their stamp of approval, so all you have to do is find a house. It's that next step. Okay, so that's something too. That way, if you find a home, you can close in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because you did all that other stuff.
And we don't see the ratios, we don't see any ratios, if we just get the kind of like.
You don't see them, and it would be hard for you to call and be like, what are your, because you're not sure what you're talking about yet, you know, you'll get there. But that's where, you know, send it to me, I'll look at it. I'll call on your behalf, that's fine. That's fine. You know, I've had people had 40 offers, they narrowed it down to 3, and then we kind of review them together. Because not always the highest offer is the best offer. It depends on other factors.
Okay, and
Okay.
and we said also the soft pool and the hard pool, they include different things, so they can be
So,
different.
well, a soft pull, if say you did one in July and the guy's credit scored 700 and it's good till December 1st. You get a contract October 15th. You should be running a hard pull then, because you gotta see, credit changes all the time. They can open a new account, they could take a car loan, they could go late on a bill. All of a sudden, their debt ratio, which is their debts to income, may not work. There's a lot of moving parts, so I would not ever put a loan into process when I have a contract unless I did a hard pull. Because I need to be able to tell everybody, yeah, this guy remained constant with his credit.
So there is a soft pool, something that can be done only once in a while?
Every 120 days, it's your initial pre-qualification,
And it doesn't impact.
and it doesn't impact credit,
Okay, okay.
okay?
When you do an extension of, for a loan,
Mhm. Like extension on the rate,
cause I know someone, they've been under contract with, in a house,
uh-huh,
but the seller. They're having some trouble with the tenants, and they've had to do, the extension. Do they have
the
to
rate
pay?
extension, the buyer has to pay. It's so terrible, even though it might be the seller's cost, like
how-
fault, right? So this is, yeah, like there's really no legal land.
Negotiate that, yeah.
I've never seen it paid for, and I believe me, I ask, you
How
know,
much is that?
it's a cost per day. It comes to approximately 0.125 every 7 days of your loan amount, okay? So say it's a $1 million loan, 0.125 is $1,250, is that right?
A day.
A day, on a $1 million loan. Yeah, but,
I just had that happen.
yeah,
As you said,
That's a lot of money.
and then what we did is we just
switch lenders,
switched lenders, because we would have had to pay.
Cheaper.
My
Yeah.
buyer, who was my son, would have to pay 9,000 in extension fees because of the seller.
Oh, that makes sense.
So it's
Wait,
point one
Because
two
the seller
five
wouldn't get the
every day?
CO.
no,
So we just
0.125
changed
of the loan
lenders.
amount per week. That's
Oh, per week, per
approximately.
week, per-
Yeah, that's per week, okay?
Yeah.
So, and it varies under what program you're locking in. So you take your loan amount, you take 0.125, that's the week, you could divide it by how many days you need, or you could just ask me. I'll figure it for you, okay? That's why, especially on new construction, I don't lock right away. Because there's no way they ever close on time, in my opinion. So I'll put a loan into process, I won't lock it immediately, we'll kind of like hash things out, get the issues out of the way. And also, the shorter the lock, the cheaper it is. The shorter the lock, the cheaper it is. 60-day lock is more expensive. You're gonna have some extra closing fees attached to that, or maybe a higher rate. A 30-day lock is a better price than a 60-day because the cost of funds, think about it for the lender. The cost of funds for holding that money for only 30 days compared to 60, they're passing it along to the buyer. 15-day lock is the cheapest, but that's someone who's really quite confident in their ability to watch the market. We have something that's called a float down. So if you lock it in and the rate gets lower by 0.25%, 0.25, you can float down to the lower rate. So you're not missing out.
Automatically,
Or no, I have to do it.
you have to.
Yeah, I have to do
execute
it.
and
I have to execute it, but I watch rates every day, you know? So those are a couple things, how long they're locking in for initially, what are the other factors around it? It's something the lender should be talking to you guys about. Okay. All right, any questions before I go into this?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a question, like when you check the documents right now, I believe you guys ask for their credit, I mean, and their
Pay stubs,
or what if
W-2s,
they have business, I mean, and the income fluctuates.
self-employed, great question. Okay, so there's a couple
They can
factors.
go up and they can go down, like, you know, there's no.
So this is one thing
Nowadays,
that's,
jobs too, but
yeah,
you know, you
no,
never
that's
know.
really big. So there's a loan that just closed on Monday, and it was with an agent in this office. And they were with another company. I got involved later. And the guy was self-employed. He's a vet. And he's been a vet for like 5 years. But he just opened his own veterinary clinic in February. And the loan officer from the other company was using his income. But you can't use income from someone who's self-employed unless they're in the business for 2 years from start date to file tax returns. Okay, so for a February income to now, that's what, like 7 months or something, 10 months, whatever. Or was it March? I don't know, whatever it is, it was like less than a year. And they were in contract and they were like processing. And they just came to me for a second opinion because they felt their rate was high and the whole deal didn't qualify. So if you have someone who is self-employed, okay, the requirement is I have to get the last 2 years' tax returns and I have to get a profit and loss statement for this year, unaudited. They could almost do it themselves. And I average the income for the last 2 years. But that often isn't going to work because people are being paid a lot of cash. They're not showing everything. They have a ton of write-offs. I have different mechanisms for getting the taxable income increased. But I automatically would look to do a non-QM loan, which is what Adrian brought up before, which is called, one of them is called DSCR. Okay, so just to go to that, all right, because I don't want to keep you guys here too long. You have to make sure if someone is self-employed and they're putting down 20%, it's fine. I can make that work and not use their tax returns. Okay, because I can give them this alternate loan. This non-QM loan means non-qualified mortgage. It's not hard money loan. Hard money loan is I don't really like that term. You would call those commercial loans, hard money loans. Non-QM is for somebody who does not follow all the boxes that a conventional loan or FHA or a VA loan follow. But they're still well qualified. They have good credit, they have money in the bank, but they might not just show the income. So I'm going to ask for their 2 years tax returns up front when I'm pre-qualifying. And I'm going to be like, oh, this guy's debt ratio doesn't work, debt to income ratio. I'm going to either tell him what his maximum dollar amount is, but often it's not enough. But I'm also going to collect his assets. Assets being his checking, savings, 401k, IRA, because that's where the pool of money he can use for the transaction. And if he's been self-employed for at least 2 years, I'm going to flip him over to a 12-month bank statement loan, which is non-QM. Now, a 12-month bank statement loan, love these. Self-employed people all day long do these. Pricing is good. Maybe it's an 8 higher or a 0.25% to a conventional, but who cares? They're not We're getting a house. You know, it's not a long-term investment for the rate. They always can refinance it. The non-QM loan is someone who you might talk to that's been like, oh, I've had a hard time qualifying, my income doesn't show, or I have all these rental properties and I'm really not showing the cash flow. As long as they're putting down 20% and they can show they have an additional 3 months of the mortgage payment and assets, I could give them a loan. I'm gonna look at their deposits averaged over the last 12 months. Say it's their business account. I'm gonna accumulate that all together. I'm gonna divide it by 12. And then I take a 50% expense factor, and that's my qualifying income.
Do you only look at the business account or do you look at?
I
business and
I
personal?
can't commingle business and personal. So, but I can use multiple business or I can use multiple personal. Most often they have the better cash flow in their business. But you cannot look at both. That's not allowed under DSCR. Okay,
They still need to be in business for 2 years.
2 years, no matter what,
Excellent.
2 years is the requirement.
Right, that's what we're waiting.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
Yes,
Yeah, for a
yes,
few people.
exactly. Yeah, people,
Yeah.
so this bank statement loan, it's basically that, and it doesn't even have to be your total form of income. Like I just did one for someone, 12 months bank statements, and then his wife got a W-2. I used her W-2. I used the average of his 12-month bank statements. I only used his business. I could not commingle it with his personal. And I was able to use those 2 forms to qualify him on his debt ratio. 20% down. He had plenty of money in the bank for assets. You gotta have money in there for closing costs. Guy was self-employed, auto detailing. He had a lot of cash flow. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get a loan. Yes,
And for the DSCR, they don't have to, I mean, they don't have to live in it, right? Like a
no, you
regular-
can't live in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another non-QM loan, these are the most popular. Bank statement, DSCR. Okay, that means debt service coverage ratio. It is for investment properties only. You cannot live in the property. You cannot be a first-time home buyer and get a DSCR loan because you need a housing history. They're not gonna be like, yo, dude, you don't even own a home and now you're just gonna show no income and have this investment property. It's not gonna work like that. You always, for first-time home buyers, have to live in their home initially, even if it's a 2-family. They can live in part, rent the other part out.
And how are like the rates, like the interest rates, are they like a little higher than conventional? And
A little bit, you know, but not a lot. Like if someone has really good credit, they are not at all cost prohibitive. And another thing that we recently start to do is we can add prepayment penalty onto that. Now, I, as a rule, don't use prepayment penalty because I'm a big refinancer. Like I keep in touch with my customers, I reach out to them, I refinance at a lower rate when the rate goes down. And a prepayment penalty means you got to keep the loan open for at least 3 years at the current rate. You can buy down, that means you are getting a lower start rate to begin with. And if the guy is not one who's going to refinance and he just needs that lower rate, even maybe to qualify, it's out there. Now, the DSCR loan means you're looking at the rent roll on the property. And if it covers the mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, no mortgage insurance because it's 20% down. And if there's any HOA and the principal and interest, 100%, that's all you need. And you show assets. You don't need to show employment. I don't care where you work. None of it. I just need to look at your credit report and see you've had another mortgage because I need to show a housing history. You're doing one of these, right? Adrian?
I have a DSCR.
What's the rate on it, do you know?
7, 8, I think, 7, 9. I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if there's points on it or not, you know, like. They're usually around 7.5, 7.25, but it depends on what your cost is gonna be. Does anyone know what points are?
You can buy them.
Yes, you can pay upfront interest and get a lower rate. You don't, 1 point is 1% of a loan amount. It doesn't always have to go to 1 point. You could pay a half a point, quarter point. It's depending on what's going on with rates that day in the bond market. So I kind of see where you're ready to lock, like where the sweet spot might be. But say you want to get a lower interest rate, you can pay points or closing fees to bring your rate down and your payment. Did you look?
Doesn't say.
Okay.
Okay.
30 are fixed. I priced one yesterday at 6.75, 0 points. That was 30% down. 30% down entitles you to the best rates. Okay,
30% down.
30% down or more. Yeah. Interesting factor for you guys is if someone's putting down 20% all the way down to 5%,
It's the same.
the rate's the same, and even you get a little extra yield on a lower down payment, which means less closing costs. And the reason is you have to have private mortgage insurance, PMI, and your PMI goes up as your down payment decreases. So here you're doing this mortgage, guys putting down 5%, your rate, maybe it's, 7%. This, we shop and say the best pricing for third-party mortgage insurance. I'll look around, see the cheapest product he can get, and if I compare his pricing for private mortgage insurance between 5% and 10%, the 10% has lower mortgage insurance, but the interest rate yield is better on the 5%. That's probably too much. We don't need to get into that. Did you guys know any idea what I just said? Okay, let's talk about this because I'm conscious of your time because Kieran talked a really long time. Okay, so we have, what was the first non-QM loan I said? Yeah, they are. And what was the other one? Bank statement, excellent. The third one that I love is an asset depletion or asset qualifier. What that means is you take the person's, say they have like really low income, like say they're a little older. They have millions in the bank, but they are on Social Security and it's really affecting their qualifying. I can take their total portfolio, right? That not considering what they're using for their purchase, take that piece out of it. And then I look at that and I divide it by 84 months. And that's my monthly qualifying income. And it's asset depletion. And the rates are even better than they are on the other non-QM loans because the risk is so low because the guy has so much money. Okay, so again, someone has low income, but a lot of assets, as long as it's 20% down, can totally do it. They don't even have to be employed.
No, I was just like,
Thinking.
why 84? Like,
I know,
I don't know, that's what like the powers that be, 7 years.
so
They want to make sure that, because, I bet it has something to do with the average time a mortgage is open. Average life of a mortgage is 7 years. It was
Okay.
previously 4 to 5 when everyone was refinancing, so I'm sure that's it.
Okay.
So that number's gonna give him how much money he has to pay that
You
mortgage.
can qualify him from a monthly, it's almost like I'm using that as his W-2.
Okay.
It's very interesting. I just closed one. Rate was great. Okay, so I didn't get into everything, but I don't want to keep you guys. Okay, because it's after.
Just one,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
just one question.
Yeah.
So when you're going to your client, you say, okay, let's get a pre-approval. You're having that conversation up front for the softball. What type of
Yes.
mortgage they're gonna be best.
Yes.
So that pre-approval, conventional, is there strength, more strength than a conventional versus? a
Excellent
non-QM?
question. That's what all the sellers want and listing agents want is conventional. It's a little annoying to me because there's other great loans too. And it's a paradigm thing. It really is, because government loans are FHA loans and VA. Okay. Conventional loans, everyone wants conventional loan 20% down or over because they think it's going to be like this. And you know what? They are. You can get a power bid approval. They're really great. But that's not always best for everybody. FHA loans, Federal Housing Administration, are better for pricing interest rate, better for mortgage insurance cost-wise, with a minimal down payment and a credit score under 700. Blows it away. And the thing is, you have to offer a conventional product because the seller's not going to want to take it because it's FHA. Now, you can always,
You can switch it.
you can, but then you have to deal with, the listing agent. At that point, I would think they'd be like, whatever, you have an approval, but not
They
always,
flip.
yeah, they flip out.
So that's curious, because you could still do a conventional pre-approval, and then when you go to actually apply, you could get whatever.
Conventional or FHA, but what I've advised
Right.
people to
I've done
do
both.
is I have them show both
That's what
pre-approvals.
I used to do
Yeah.
a lot of VA when I was at another company.
Yeah,
And if the person could qualify conventionally, I would just give them both.
yeah,
Like they're gonna go VA so they can use
they're,
what they're
they're,
entitled to.
exactly, no
But-
mortgage insurance, yeah.
God forbid they qualify. And it
Yeah, you
worked-
could always flip it over.
It worked
So-
every time.
And so that's what I would do, instead of being like beating around the bush, I would show them both and let them know the pricing in this particular scenario is just much better, and it's better for the buyer. Now the thing that people are so worried about with FHA is they feel that there's a high likelihood of additional inspections and that the appraisal is not gonna go through. Okay? There are no additional inspections. You should never be sending your lender a home inspection, a
Mhm.
septic, well, that will blow things up. If that guy doesn't have enough experience to shield it from the people that need to see it because there's repair, it could blow your deal up. Okay, so don't ever supply anything unless you're asked for it. The only time we would need a septic inspection on an FHA loan is if the appraiser puts in his appraisal report that there is a potential heads up why he's not hooked up to it. Okay, or if the septic is within 10 feet of the border of the property, that's another thing, because it's like a safety issue. The reason why FHA appraisals can sometimes be viewed more strictly is because they're tougher on no chipping, peeling paint, exposed wood. Handrails required 4 steps or more. That's it. That's it. So if you have a guy who can qualify with 3.5% down and his debt to income ratio is over 50%, and he can get it. I closed 2 this month under 6%. It can be much, just try to be open to it. If you have if you're the listing agent and your house is clean and there's no issues, and someone comes along with FHA, they're good loans. They're really good loans. Now, they can end up being more expensive because there's an upfront mortgage insurance fee that's tacked onto the loan, so your balance is higher. But that's nothing for you to really worry about, but that's something that the customer might mention. But overall, we analyze, we look at what's best. Conventional, FHA, VA, non-QM, commercial is really for fix and flips, 50-unit properties, stuff like that. Okay, that we are just starting to get into that.
Question
And we
for the
broker that.
VA,
Uh-huh.
the only difference is that the seller has to cover, is it a termite?
Yes, termite inspection.
They
Yes,
have to pay for the inspection.
yes, they have to pay for it. So with a VA loan, if they do have a septic, you do need a septic inspection and well. VA requires that. FHA does not. You need a termite inspection for VA, costs like $150. And then VA can be great, but challenging sometimes because the rates are lower and there's no mortgage insurance, and the VA never wants to turn down a veteran. I've seen them approve debt ratios over 60%, where conventional is 50%. I mean, that's a huge swing, but they often have a lower down payment because you can do 100% financing on a VA loan, and that goes against the vanilla 20% down conventional loan. So that's the challenge there, but it's another thing, great loan.
So another thing you mentioned that appraisal on the FHA, right, like the debt might not appraise, so that can be a risk factor as well?
I don't think it is at all. I think that's a paradigm of people. Okay, I do FHA loans all day, and I talk to the seller and the buyer, and I ask, is there any chipping, paint, exposed wood, or a handrail that's over 4 steps? I've had people slap a coat of paint on, put a rug over.
My buyer just
deck.
painted windows, like the frame.
Yep.
3 windows for his loan to be approved.
Exactly. And the buyer did it. See, it's really the seller responsibility, but the seller probably is like, no, I'm not gonna do
I
it.
put into the contract that the
Mhm.
buyer will.
Oh, that was good.
The FHA required,
Excellent.
and that got the offer accepted, and the
Yeah.
buyer went, he only had to paint like the 3 windows on the outside, the wood part.
Great thinking, Maria.
And it was like easy.
Right there, you're handling the objection of the seller up front by saying,
Mhm.
if there's repair, we'll do it.
But that's inspection, not that.
No, that's appraisal.
That's a.
She's talking about the appraisal. Yeah, because inspection, I don't wanna say, I don't care what it says.
Yeah.
So I should write that for all my FHA offers?
I would,
Yeah.
Right? That's
Definitely.
great, I love
I
that.
like it.
The only way I think that for me.
Do you put a dollar amount on it?
No, I
No.
just put.
I've seen them with dollar
You
amount.
probably should.
Yeah, I don't, but I feel like when it goes to the attorney, I think she changes it on. that.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is fine, because you're an attorney review.
Yeah.
Like how you think. Yeah, you already have an accepted
She
contract.
does put a amount there, I just don't know what it is.
Yeah,
That's
Or I
probably.
put
500
minor
bucks.
repairs too, I put minor repairs.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah,
of
totally.
course, the attorney's gonna,
Right, and you've already seen the house, you know what the story is, you know?
So you have to be ready to waive appraisal also with the FHA loan if, because that's additional risk, right? If in our market right now, that the house don't appraise to the actual price, right? If FHA.
It kinda
appraises
depends.
lower, Then.
See, even though you're waiving an appraisal in your contract as your offer, you're not really waiving it on the, unless the lender tells you they ran a, what's it called, that system?
AUS.
When you run the AUS, the automated underwriting system, it'll tell you if an appraisal is needed or not. FHA always requires an appraisal. Conventional does not.
So you really
20% down.
can't waive it.
Also, if
You
it's
can't
FHA.
waive it, but you
Can't
can
waive it
waive it if
for-
they have enough money in the bank
Right.
and they'll do it all anyway, you know, because the whole idea with waiving an appraisal is, number one, you have enough knowledge so you know what it's gonna appraise at. Number two, if it appraises lower, you have enough money in the bank to cover it, but most importantly, you don't have to spend another dime, because if you're putting down 30%, I can restructure it, so now you're putting down 20%, because it appraised 10% lower.
But then not with FHA.
FHA, you can restructure, just because it under appraises doesn't mean there's problems with the condition. You could still put an appraisal gap in on an FHA appraisal, or technically waive it based on the fact that you have enough money to pay cash for it.
So in that case, so if you put an appraisal gap in and you show proof of funds to cover
Mm-hmm,
the gap, that's X.
yeah,
And now that increases your down payment
Yep.
to over whatever
Yeah.
percentage.
as long as you have
Then
enough
you
to meet the
restructure,
requirement for the minimum down
Then you
payment.
restructure the loan.
Exactly.
At the other side, when you actually apply,
Mm-hmm,
based on the amount of deposit that may be
exactly.
required.
So it's really, and don't get too caught up on that. That's something for maybe you to talk to the lender about. And like, can we have an appraisal gap or an appraisal waiver? And the lender will look and say, yeah, I absolutely can waive it, or you can put a gap on there that it can appraise 20 grand less than what the contract is, and you're still fine.
I'm just thinking from the seller perspective, what makes it riskier, right? So for me, like if I were a seller, I would
Yeah.
think, oh, if the price is lower, would they have money, right? There's the whole thing.
Right.
Question going on.
People think that FHA loans, maybe the people aren't as qualified. Maybe, they also are worried that the appraisal is gonna be stricter, with conditions. Not that maybe necessarily it's gonna come in lower, but it's gonna be harsher. I think that's why people, I don't know, you guys would know that better than me, but is it FHA because you're afraid your deal's not gonna go through? I don't know. I mean,
It's more thinking.
it's really a paradigm shift, quite frankly. I was shocked when I came to this side of the business. I'm like, what do you mean people don't like FHA loans?
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're great. Love them. All daddy. And I can streamline them in 6 months. No appraisal, no credit, no income, float it down 0.5%. It's better than that. Okay, what else? Because it's already 12 late.
I have one crazy
Yes.
question at the end.
Well, I don't want to we could always get together, guys, because you've been in here an hour and 20 minutes, and I know attention spans falter, at
That's
least mine does.
exciting. I'm just like all in. I can.
You are,
Love it.
well, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. I want you guys to be able to eat lunch and do whatever, but do you want to answer one last question?
You know what? No, this just came up.
No,
Don't
we'll
ask,
be eating dinner.
don't ask, no. Should we be considering asking if a seller's got an assumable mortgage?
Yes, excellent topic. Assumable mortgage is for FHA and VA. And what that means is if the current owner has
SHA.
only FHA and VA, that's the only loans they're on. Okay, but excellent topic. Someone called me on one recently. If the seller has a 3% VA loan and they're saying, and it's assumable, the buyer can take over that mortgage. They can apply to the lender to take it over, which is awesome because then you don't have to go for 6 to 7%. But the issue is you can't get any other financing. So if the guy is selling the home for 500 and the VA loan that's assumable is 300, the buyer's got to have another 200 grand cash.
So he can't mortgage the
Yeah,
difference.
nope. Can't mortgage the difference. So that's tricky. That's tricky to find someone who's selling their home practically for what it's worth. Could be a family member. That's not a bad gig. Gift of equity. We'll get together. There's a lot of stuff. Okay. All right. Go eat. Enjoy. I'm not trying to cut you guys off, but I'm a very time conscious. Am I like being abrupt?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Could I open this for them?
Yes, please. It's hot in here. But we'll do this again. Did I look